Du Plessis, listen to me very carefully. Make sure you are in Australia for UFC 293. It is of paramount importance that Du Plessis physically be in the audience when Adesanya fights Strickland. Adesanya is going to choose his next opponent. I don't think anybody would deny that. I'm just sharing for you. If somebody does come out and deny that and say that's not how this works here and you don't choose your own opponent, Adesanya is going to choose his next opponent. We can say the other and we can play that game. Adesanya is going to choose his next opponent. And he's going to choose him that night. Adesanya has never left the cage without letting us, the audience, know who's next. Right now, Adesanya still has a focus and an interest on Du Plessis. And by the way, that's the fight. I mean, we can play this whole how great Chimaev, which is true, and we could play about Paulo Costa and the rematch, and that's all true. But we cannot act as though the truest and clearest number one contender in the division, which is named Robert Whittaker, didn't not only get beat, he got stopped. He not only got outdone on his feet, he got out-grappled. I mean, remember when he got taken down with a headlock? Not for nothing. I would never pick on Whittaker. What a stud. We got to give Du Plessis his due. Now, Stephen A. Smith will say, sometimes the lights get too bright. And there was a moment in that face-off when Du Plessis turns around and Izzy was standing there. There was a moment when the lights got too bright. That's not a problem. And I don't tease Du Plessis for saying that. The fact that Du Plessis got scared, by the way, like that's one thing that fighters always deny. I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. It's like playground rules and you can't say it. It's a good thing that you can get scared. Otherwise, you're a sociopath. Like, there's no insult here from me. The problem or potential problem as that fight approaches, right? If it's fight week and Izzy and Du Plessis has denied that he was scared, that's a problem. I'm talking to you purely from a sports psychology background. If you have a weakness and or an ailment, best thing you can do is to admit it. The absolute, you take all the power away. Simple as that. Like, there's some things I can't do. Are you guys looking at me? You looking right at me? Let's pretend I'm at a press conference, all right? Chael P, I'm at a press conference, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm saying hey to Kevin Iole, and my mom's in the back, and Dave Meltzer somehow snuck back in, and there I got Mark Marmonde in the corner, and I'm looking around, and then I come and tell you that I can't fight because my neck hurts. I can't even move the damn thing. But imagine that. Imagine that I'm whipping around, I'm nodding, I'm all over the place, and then I tell you I can't do a fight, got my neck, I can't even move it. Do you know what a fool I'm going to look like? I mean, right, like there's certain body parts, if you're going to work the I'm hurt scam, as ridiculous as it sounds that the dog ate my homework, somewhere in the world, the dog is eating the homework. But it's a really hard one to pull if you don't have a dog at home. Are you with me? So of all the body parts that are going to be hurt, of all the mystery body parts, to say it's your foot when you just fought and then you walked out of the cage, you walked into the press conference. You got up and walked out of the press conference. Like there's certain, you can't go with my foot. You got to go with the rib. You have to go with the rib. The rib always works. You can't even put a rib in a cast, by the way, when it's broken. It's not like an arm. Like you can say, I have a broken rib right now. They're not going to say, well, let me see your cast. That's not how it works. You always go with the rib. You always go with the rib. Okay. Well, I say this because there is a fear factor, and we have to acknowledge that. Now, one thing with fear, and I think that we can all relate to it, is if we have enough time, we can deal with the fear. We can overcome it. We can take a deep breath, accept the moment for what it is, and move forward. That's true. So, if Du Plessis comes to this fight, it's going to have a very high probability that Izzy calls him out. Now, it's not because he smoked Bobby Knuckles. It's not because he spoke up. It's not because of the African angle that these two guys were working. It's not because they used to train together or at least did one session of grappling in Thailand that's been disclosed to us, the audience. It's not any of those things. There's nobody else to pick. There is nobody for Izzy to pick. The fight that we are well aware a number one contender could potentially be identified with is a month down the road on a different continent. Of course, I'm talking about Chimaev versus Paulo Costa. Adesanya is not going to be as interested in waiting for that or putting his name behind the idea that the winner of that, I will honor the result and they will fight me, because Adesanya would prefer to not do rematches. He's told us that. Now, he's done a rematch every time he's ever been asked. He will do a rematch. That's not the conversation I'm having. I'm sharing with you that parity is something to help motivate the guy. And I think we all can understand where that would make sense. This is the king who climbed the mountain, and he's hungry enough to stay there and want it and sacrifice and work. We could understand where we could demotivate him if he keeps having to do the same thing over and over again. That's a very fair opinion or conclusion by the champ. So I don't think that he's going to be quite as interested. No, he's also not going to want to put out any kind of a feel that he has a reservation or a trepidation about fighting a potential Chimaev. It's just going to be a situation of, yes, I would be interested in Chimaev. I would see that he would be a next opponent, but I'm not going to say that's the number one contenders match. Oh, by the way, I didn't want to wait till October. Oh, by the way, I got my biggest rival, and he's sitting right there, and they've said he's the number one contender, and there's just simply no other middleweights that have spoken up. There is no other middleweight out there that's even done an interview speaking up. So purely by process of no other option, you've got Du Plessis unless he doesn't show. Things could change. Things could change. That's going to piss Izzy off, right? It's a very emotional decision by Adesanya. Every time it's a very emotional decision. And not always a negative emotion. I mean, time and time again, I've got to remind you of the Jared Cannonier situation, where Jared Cannonier left Izzy with a very positive feeling. But it was still an emotion, and Izzy wanted to do something for him and made sure to get him an opportunity when he could. I mean, I'm just sharing with you, it matters, and Izzy has come out. You want to know where this whole thing is coming from? Israel Adesanya did an interview that I caught this morning, and he said, we'll see. That's the fight I want. That's the direction I'm going. But he needs to show up. I bring you those words because I then reread the interview, and then I scanned it a third time. But my scanning is pretty effective. I couldn't find anywhere where he specified specifically what he meant by show up. Did he mean show up to the fight if they actually have one? I don't think so. I think he was saying he needs to show up. He needs to make the trip. He needs to come to Australia. He needs to be there. He needs to put this effort in. He was supposed to be fighting me that night. He's too hurt to fight me. But he shouldn't be too hurt to show up. I'm adding stuff to it. Izzy didn't say that part. I'm telling you, this was my interpretation. I think that Izzy has laid out a criteria. And he will stick to it. Izzy will stick to his guns as tightly as Khabib used to stick to his guns. If he says it, you can count on it. I'm just not sure what he said. Right? I'm not sure. But I think he's talking about DDP needs to be there that night. And if he is, Izzy will look to him or maybe even call him into the ring. Now, this isn't a perfect scenario. And I'm having fun with it. I'm having fun with the perfect scenario. But the time is going to come, and we're about 2 weeks away. But the time is going to come where we're going to need to break down that fight. And not for nothing. Enjoy this Du Plessis. Enjoy the fact that Du Plessis had better show up. Enjoy the fact that it's probably going to be Du Plessis versus Adesanya, which is going to put a major wrench in what I believe has been a promise behind the scenes number one contenders match between Paulo Costa and Khamzat Chimaev. But before we get to all that, he's going to have to beat Sean Strickland. He can do it. But that's not guaranteed. Sean Strickland can throw everything we just discussed and everything we think we know about the middleweight division and its future throughout 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. Sean Strickland's the guy that can change this entire story